I mean, there are likely people in your life that you were close to 5 years ago that you're not close to, or worse, anymore. So my question going into this year, and I hope your question going into this year, does it have to be that way again this year? And honestly, I'm not even primarily today talking about outside in our great big country or inside the overall great big church with a capital C. Connected to what Paul's already said here in Romans chapter 12, I wonder if it could be different in the places that you and I show up every single day around here. If you got a Bible today, go ahead and grab it and meet me in Romans chapter 12. In Romans chapter 12, we've been there the last couple of weeks in this teaching series that we've called 4 for 24. We've just been walking through this chapter, Romans chapter 12, for the last few weeks together, looking at 4 big decisions that could change the trajectory of your year by changing the trajectory of every single day this year. And they're all found right here in Romans chapter 12. Now, I know that some of you, for reasons of cold or travel or just getting back on campus, welcome back, college students, good to see you guys. Some of you haven't been here the last couple of weeks, and I'm obviously not under the impression that all of you sit at your computer or your phone with your podcast and hit refresh on Monday and Tuesday until the podcast drops on the Sundays that you miss, like my mother does. But if you weren't able to be here the last couple of weeks for one reason or another, they might be helpful to you, just in catching some context in Romans chapter 12, seeing where we've been, but also serving as some building blocks for your year over the next many weeks together. So week 1, we talked about decision number 1 for the year. We talked about decision number 1 is this: to live towards who you were uniquely designed to be. And we saw that right there in Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. And part of what we realize, and part of hopefully what you've experienced, is that every single one of us at some point or another have separated ourselves from life. We've separated ourselves from the life giver, the one who designed life and the life that he desires for us and from us. And in his mercy, he's made a way back for us, but involves releasing our control on our life and refocusing on his mercy in our life instead, allowing him to transform us from whatever we become back into who he's designed us to be. That was decision number 1. You make that every single day, to decide to be a person that lives towards who he's designed you to be. From there, decision number 2 is this: to serve others fully inside of that. Well, part of what we see is that God designed us to live humbly with his mercy in view, which means recognizing that we were people that needed his mercy to begin with. We needed mercy to come find us and rescue us if we were going to have hope. But not only do we need his mercy to find us, his mercy was glad to find us. We are also the people to whom he was glad to give his mercy. And we are called to live in light of that. The decision number 2 is to serve one another fully. Only from there, with his mercy in view, can we begin to live into who he's designed us to be uniquely and also connectedly. We have a part to play in what God is doing everywhere we find ourselves, whenever we're there, whomever we're with, every day, every door, every time. That's what he's invited us into. That's decision number 2. So some of that's the what of Romans chapter 12. Today we get into the how. And honestly, I'm not sure that I can think of a more relevant passage for us to find ourselves in as we're anticipating a year to come, specifically this year to come, than Romans chapter 12, beginning in verse 9. So just think about where we're at even in the last week. Monday, you're probably aware, was Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Monday was also another really important day in the trajectory of our year. It was the Iowa caucuses, which launch us formally into election year this year. If you were around for the last election year or the election year before that, if you were around and aware and awake in 2016, for sure if you were around and aware and awake during 2020, you know that there's something about an election year these days that have become years that test followers of Jesus on several different levels. Are you aware and awake for that? It's true outside the church, tests us. I mean, public opinion among people who don't follow Jesus, about those of us who do follow Jesus, public opinion's fallen off a cliff. You're probably aware of that. And you may be one of those people that says, that the sort of fake news, and that's not totally wrong. Some of the public opinion out there that the surveys are based on asking people who do follow Jesus and also just asking anybody who would call themselves a Christian whether or not they actually follow Jesus, the same questions. And so that skews some of that data. That's probably true, part of the reason that opinion has fallen off the cliff. But I also think that it's true, and I think you would agree, if we're honest with ourselves, we'd have to admit that some of the reputation that we have in the world out there is deserved. We've earned it. It's sort of on us who do follow Jesus that we've allowed people who live near us, work with us, to see people that don't represent us as speaking for us as people who follow Jesus, without giving them an up-close and personal look at what a true follower of Jesus looks like. But out there is not the only place that these years seem to have tested us, if you've been around and aware of them. They've also revealed something inside the church with a capital C too, haven't they? I mean, there are likely people in your life that you were close to 5 years ago that you're not close to, or worse, anymore. And something about 2016, something about 2020 has everything to do with it. So my question going into this year, and I hope your question going into this year, does it have to be that way again this year? And honestly, I'm not even primarily today talking about outside in our great big country, or inside the overall great big church with a capital C. Connected to what Paul's already said here in Romans chapter 12, I wonder if it could be different in the places that you and I show up every single day around here. I wonder if it could be different this year within our church. Even more, I wonder if it could be different for you as a person who is designed to be uniquely, humbly connected wherever you are. Paul's going to get to the out there in the world part next week. This week, he takes on how to help us be together in a world that would love to pull us out, to wear us out, and to ultimately take us out of the purpose for which God is sending us. And I've got a molecular biology illustration you can get fired up about in a second. First, I just want you to hear what Paul says here in Romans chapter 12. How do we uniquely stay us and stay unified as the body of Christ at work in a world like ours? That's what Paul talks about. Look at Romans chapter 12, beginning at verse 9. He says this: love must be sincere. Hate what is evil, cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love, honor one another above yourselves. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with the Lord's people who are in need. I was thinking several weeks ago about how to explain this passage. And I happened to be listening to a podcast with a guy that was talking about free radicals. So buckle up. I'm not that kind of doctor, but I did look it up on WebMD and it checks out. So, and actually, just like everything else that you look up on WebMD, I'm pretty confident I'm dying from this. So, free radicals. You know what free radicals are? So free radicals are atoms in your body that are missing an electron. And they don't like that. They don't like feeling incomplete. So they're always in search of an electron that they're missing. They go around in your body looking for an electron that they can steal from another atom so that they don't have to be incomplete anymore. It's happening right now, all the time in your body. See, you thought you were feeling good today. These free radicals are going crazy in your body. Actually, they're not going crazy in your body if you're healthy. See, the thing, normally it's a good thing these free radicals are. When you're healthy, when you're calm, free radicals go take electrons from diseases, from things inside of your body that are bad for your body. They neutralize them. They take them out. They keep you healthy. Free radicals are good, except when they go bad. And they go bad. When the system's off, and especially when you're under stress, when you're overwhelmed, free radicals start freaking out. They start thinking, think about this, the free radicals start thinking that everything they see that doesn't look like them is a disease. They start attacking everything inside of you and actually creating more free radicals. It's like free radicals are contagious at that point when they're freaking out. It's actually called a radical cascade. And that perfectly describes, does it not, the world that you and I wake up in every single day. Stressed out, overwhelmed, freaking out chaos that's contagious, that's picking up steam in a way that feels like it's totally out of control and getting worse. Look back at Romans chapter 12, because this is not just WebMD. It's all right here too. In fact, 1900 years before Moses Gomberg discovered the free radical, Paul anticipated the world that we would wake up in as us. Because the world he woke up in as him, it turns out is not that different at all. Look what he says in verse 9 again. Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil. Cling to what is good. And don't get it twisted, right? Just like free radicals. Free radicals are good when they seek and destroy the things that are evil to promote and protect what's good. But when the chaos comes, they turn on themselves, they turn on each other, and they cling to what's evil and destroy what's good, and they take you and me out in the process. So what do we do? Well, notice the first part of the verse. Paul says, love must be sincere. The word that he uses there for love is a word you may have heard before. It's the Greek word agape. It's interesting, you may have heard that word before, but the people that Paul wrote to might not have heard that word so much, especially going back to their ancient Greek classes in school growing up, because it's a word that didn't get used a whole lot about anything until the early Christians grabbed a hold of the word and used the word to describe something, this self-emptying, self-sacrificial love that they didn't have categories for until Jesus showed up and showed them what it was, agape. If you've been tracking with us for the last couple of weeks, you know exactly what Paul's doing here when he brings that word into the picture. He's bringing God's mercy back in view for us. He's reminding us before he says anything else to us that before we can move ahead, we have to have God's mercy in view. The mercy of God, the agape of Jesus, is the only way that anything else he's about to say makes sense. Because the self-emptying, self-sacrificial love of Jesus is the only way, and we'll come back to this later, remember week 1, it's the only way for us to become who we were originally designed to be in a world like ours. Paul says your love, when you do that, when you reflect agape love towards others, must be, what's the word? Sincere. Literally without a mask. Anti-hypocrite. So put weeks 1 and 2 together. What he's saying is, Christ followers, you're being transformed by the mercy of God into who you were designed to be. There's always going to be this tendency for you to go back to the false identity that you'd adopted and take that mask and put it back on to live like who you used to be. To cling to evil, to destroy good, either intentionally or just accidentally because you get caught up in the chaos. Were you around and aware in 2020? Can that happen to people like us, where we accidentally destroy each other because we get caught up in the chaos? Paul says, don't fall for that. Here's the decision. Everyday decision this year. And then we'll look at some really practical specifics. Decision number 3 is this: be the right kind of radical. Be the right kind of radical. Every single day, especially when the world that you wake up in every day is crazy and chaotic, the wrong kind of radical is cascading and contagious. You and I are going to have to decide what kind of radical we're going to be. And Paul invites us to make the decision, be the right kind of radical. Which raises 2 questions, at least, for us, doesn't it? First one is, what does the right kind of radical look like in a world like this? But the second question is, how in the world do I be that? You ready? Paul's going to give us 3 contrasts. If you're like me, every single one of them can be an everyday struggle, especially in days like these, in a world like ours, around people like you. Romans 12, look at verse 10. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. Okay, so we're going to get to the people out there next week. This week, Paul's talking about free radicals inside the body. He's talking about one another, each other, people who claim to know and follow Jesus. He anticipates that there might be a temptation at some point in a world like ours in the chaos to be 2 different kinds of free radical, even within the same body. He tells us what it looks like to be the right kind of radical, to cling to what is good. He says, be devoted. And if you're collecting Greek words for love this morning, this is one of the other ones. Not agape, this is the word storge. Storge. It's a word for a deep connectedness or bondedness that you experience with somebody in your life who is not part of your family. It's that kind of connectedness. Some of you experience storge in the high school football locker room with those kind of people, high school baseball team. Storge, kind of deep connected bondedness with. Some of you, it's with your pledge class, pledge brothers or sisters. Some of you, it was a battalion in the military. Some of us, it's people in recovery alongside us. Hopefully you've experienced this kind of love and bondedness in a community group or with other couples in Reengage. That kind of bond, especially in chaos, when you're on a mission together. It's called storge kind of love. Sometimes it even feels like a tighter bond than family love, doesn't it? Those of you that have experienced it, especially in chaos or in battle. So here's what's interesting. Paul, in this passage, says, philostorge in Philadelphia. Another word for love. You know what Philadelphia, what's Philadelphia mean? Brotherly love, family kind of love. And literally what he says here, we all talk about all 3. He says literally, in your agape, philostorge in Philadelphia. So what's he saying? As you're choosing to self-empty and self-sacrificially love one another, let it be revealed in a commitment to each other that takes the best of brotherly love and the best of team on a mission in the chaos kind of love and fuses them together in an unbreakable commitment to one another, to one another's good, whatever the circumstances around you. And he adds to it the command to honor one another above yourselves. The idea of honor means literally to give something weight, to treat it like it has substance. And I love that idea because I can give you weight. I can treat you like you have substance, even while I disagree with everything you say. Can I not? I could treat you like you have weight and substance even if you annoy the fire out of me. Give you weight means that I listen to you, that I might empathize with you. You're not just an argument. You're not just who you vote for or what opinion you have on a social issue of the day, or second or third tier theological debate. I don't dismiss you because of any one thing about you. I treat you as a person that has substance and weight, whoever you are and whatever you represent. And because you have weight and substance, I'm free to disagree with you. I'm also free to lovingly, carefully, humbly lean into your blind spots alongside of you for your good, right? The right kind of free radical. That's not the way it works in our world in the chaos, is it? That's not the way the radical cascade happens around us. We live in a world where the natural thing to do is freak out, to either separate from each other or dishonor and discredit one another, to treat each other like weightless, disposable people. It's the difference between nice dishes that you have at your house, the fine china that you have at your house that you use, but you treat with wisdom. You're careful with it. And the disposable plates that you bring out, soil, and then throw in the garbage can. Paul says when the chaos comes to a world like yours, you're going to have to choose what you cling to. Devotion and dignity, or division and dishonor. And that's a choice you're going to have to make every day this year, is it not? And then he goes on, verse 11. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. You ever find yourself just spiritually out of gas? Spiritually tired, exhausted? It's not just years like these that can do it to us, but I remember sitting at lunch with James Womack a few years ago. He's been a really, really good friend of mine for the last 15 or 20 years, the pastor of a church down the street. It's a predominantly African-American church. We've been really, really good friends for a really, really long time. A lot of water under the bridge. Our churches are great friends too. We've done a lot of stuff together. Even pulled together some men from both of our churches every month for a year prior to 2020 because we sort of saw some writing on the wall. Some things that were coming in our world, and we wanted our churches to have real life friendships that went further than just token relationships with each other. Pre-2020. And then a Tatiana Jefferson happened. Then 2020 happened. And George Floyd happened, and Black Lives Matter happened. The Dallas police murders happened, and the world was on fire while we were sitting at lunch. And both of us were just dealing with fair criticism of both of us and unfair criticism of both of us from every single possible side. We just sat there staring at each other. And finally he said, I'm tired. Just feeling out of gas. We're trying to love each other well, trying to love the churches that we love well in the middle of the chaos. And this was the verse that came up. I remember James pointed out how Paul ties spiritual energy to community. Do you see it there in verse 11? Sometimes it's not that level of chaos that causes our spiritual energy to leak. Lord willing, that's a once-in-a-lifetime kind of situation that we experienced a few years ago. Sometimes it's just the normal chaos of life in a world like ours that saps our spiritual energy. Fatigue can come for us when we're overstressed, when we're overworked. Can it not? You know, fatigue can also come the other way, when we just get flabby, when we just kind of lay around and we don't exercise. You ever been on vacation? You ever been sick for a period of time, then you come back, get ready to re-engage. You go back to work after a vacation where you just kind of sat around and look at your watch. It's like, oh God, I need a nap, and it's not even lunchtime yet. Flabbiness, it just causes us to be fatigued. Overwork and underwork can leave us fatigued in a world like this. Same thing's true spiritually. What's the solution to spiritual fatigue? What does Paul say? Keep your spiritual fervor. How? Serving the Lord. How? Together. Community. That's what he just said, right? Well, how does community help spiritual fatigue? Community is resistance training, right? And if you've ever really experienced it, what happens is we commit to one another, and we do it right. We spend enough time that the people around us, the people that we're committed to in that kind of a bond, they hold us up. They help us out. But also in the middle of that, we find out that they are hard to love people. And holding them up, helping them out, sometimes even just putting up with them, takes something from us, just like it does for them when they have to hold us up and help us out and put up with us. It costs us something to love people around us. Sometimes they annoy us. Sometimes they got bad habits. Sometimes they just keep struggling with the same stuff every single week. They're needy. They're selfish. All this stuff, at least in my community group. I told him I was going to tell you guys this. I don't see any of them here today. It's resistance training. Time together under tension. Just a little tension. All the time. Not overworking me, but not letting me get flabby. It's just enough to remind me, as I've got God's mercy in view and I'm pouring myself out for somebody else, it keeps nudging me back to this reminder. This is how God in Christ Jesus loved me. He will never ask me to love to an extent that I haven't already been loved. When I'm reminded of the mercy that I've received, it re-energizes me spiritually. It re-engages me in his purpose for me to show who he is and what he's like, and in his power and in his strength wherever I'm sent. But in the chaos of my group, the chaos of our world, I've got to choose what to cling to. Spiritual energy or spiritual lethargy. My commitment to community is going to reveal, at least at some level, it's going to reveal my choice. Do I want to stay in relationship under tension, or do I want to pull out and get flabby? Last one, then we'll look at how. Look at verse 12. He says, be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with the Lord's people who are in need. Paul's continuing this one another in community thought. And you notice all of those words are plural. But look what he's pointing to in the list. Look at the circumstances that he's talking about here. Those are things that will take well-meaning, sincere, God-loving people out of the game completely. It'll take us out of the race early. He doesn't talk about blowing up or sinning out here. He talks about that in other lists. Here, he deals with the kind of things that in a world like ours are just the slow discouragements of life following Jesus in a chaotic world like this. Notice what he says. He talks about when your hope's in the right place, but you find yourself waiting a really, really, really long time for what you hope for. He talks about when you find yourself afflicted. And that's actually a word that can refer to something external or something internal that just sort of rubs you until you're raw. Have you been there? He talks about when you feel like your prayers are bouncing off the ceiling, when you have needs that you don't know how to meet. When those kinds of things show up for us in the middle of a world like ours, it is easy for the life that we've been given to slowly leak out of us. And again, what he's telling us is, he's telling us that we need us to avoid that. He's saying, you guys, your hope will always be less than your potential for hope if your hope isn't shared together. You will always be more patient together than you'll ever be patient alone. Praying alone is hard. Praying together is hard, but it's easier. When you're in community, it's rare that you have a need and someone else doesn't have more than the thing you need than they need. But it's like we say all the time, the moment that you need community is the wrong time to start looking for it. That's why a commitment to community is one of the greatest investments you'll make in your whole life when it comes to your spiritual longevity. It's an antidote to a spiritual life that just sort of leaks with the circumstances. But Paul encourages us, we're going to have to choose that. Spiritual longevity or the slow, circumstantial leaks of life. In fact, not to draw that free radical parallel too tight, doctors say that radical cascades in the chaos are the explanation for premature aging. When you live your whole life under pressure, abnormal chaos and stress, the free radicals multiply and cascade and overwhelm your whole system, and the result takes a toll on your body physically. So how do you keep that from happening spiritually? How do you make sure that the chaos of our world, or even just the chaos of your world, how do you make sure that you stay or become the right kind of radical this year? I'm glad you asked me that question. The solution for the wrong kind of free radicals and radical cascades, do you know what it is? Antioxidants. So eat more blueberries and spinach and you ought to be fine. Let's pray. Wait, what's an antioxidant? Antioxidants are the coolest thing in the world for atoms that are searching for an electron that's missing. Because antioxidants are like sacrificial cells whose whole purpose in existence is to give their electron away. They come to the free radicals and they die so that the free radical can have what it needs and relax. Remember what we said at the very beginning? The only way this works is the mercy of God. This is the agape of Jesus. He came to the earth lacking nothing. He didn't separate from life, ever. Never once put on the mask of a false identity. And he said he came to the world to seek and to save what was missing. Not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a sacrifice so that you could have the life that you're missing. So that as it relates to life and godliness, you could have everything you lack and rest. So that you could be mature and complete, not lacking anything. And to give it to you, he gave up his life. He took the penalty of the chaos so that you could have peace. And he offers it to you as a gift you can accept this morning before you leave. And then he invites us to live life with him as he lives life through us to show who he is and to show what he's like towards each other and then towards a world going crazy in the chaos. So what would it look like for you to decide to live that way this year? Each week I've given you a challenge, the first week to discover 3 or 4 words that he would use to call you uniquely out of a crowd when it comes to your unique design and identity. Last week I challenged you to think of an environment every day that you could serve in response to a need or an opportunity around you. This week it's this. I want you to think about all the anothers that you're going to get to one another this year. Thinking mainly about other followers of Jesus for this week. What's one person? What's one kind of person in your life that you already know it will take supernatural empowerment for you to love this year? And then think about what specific moves you would need to make every day to commit to devotion and dignity, not losing momentum, going the distance all year towards them as a reflection of the way that God has made a way towards you. Could you plan to do one of those this week? Anticipating the chaos in a world that's gone crazy. His invitation is to be the right kind of radical that hates what's evil, even towards each other, that clings to what's good. That's his invitation. And this year it's our decision. Would you bow your head and pray with me? It's possible that you've come to this place this morning and you realize there's still something that you're missing, something ultimate that you can't get for yourself. And you've tried religion, you've tried trying, you've tried resolving, you've tried any number of things, and you can't find it. And it's causing you to go crazy and freak out in all kinds of different ways. And the best news that you could hear today is that Jesus came into the world to find you and to give his life to you personally. He died on a cross for you. And he rose from the dead to give you life that you're missing, and he offers it to you as a gift. You don't have to be religious. You don't have to make the resolutions. He's already done the work, and he offers it to you for free. And right where you're sitting, you can receive that gift by telling him in your own words, I'm accepting the gift of life from you. And I don't know how all of this works, but I believe that in your power and your mercy, you can make me whole. I believe that you died for me and rose from the dead to forgive my sins, to live within me, to give me power and hope for the future. And that's about all I know right now. But it's enough for me to put my trust in you. Lord, for those that are trusting you for the very first time today, for some of us, Lord, who realize that we received life from you a long time ago, but we haven't been living life with you for long. Would you let us be the right kind of radical this year? Would you let this be a year where we cling to what is good, that we devote ourselves to one another, that we love each other well and clearly, that we look like Jesus together before we show him to the world? And Lord, would you let us go the distance for the sake of Jesus' name, in his strength and power and life, we ask it. Amen.
Hey, thanks for watching. If something you heard resonated with you today, we would love to connect with you. Visit doxology.church/connect or leave a comment below. And if you enjoyed today's message and you want to see more, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any new videos.